She laughed in my face, loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. Her friends joined in, phones up, recording me like I was a joke they could replay later. All I said was, "How about camping by the river for our anniversary?" She smirked. "Camping? Diesel smell and mosquitoes? That's your idea of romance?" The laughter hit harder than any punch. I felt every eye turn toward me, a man out of place in his own relationship. My jaw tightened, my chest burned. But I didn't give them the show they wanted. I smiled instead, pulled out my card. "Dinner's on me," I said, steady. Silence. Just the sound of her phone camera still rolling. That was the moment I realized. I didn't have to win the argument. I just had to walk away. And when I did, her smile disappeared too. Ever been laughed at like that? Hit subscribe. You'll want to hear what happened next. I walked out to the sidewalk and the night hit me. Cold air, hot face, her laughter thinning behind the glass. The hostess closed the door, and the sound died like someone turned the volume knob to 0. I could still see the table through the window. Golden restaurant light on a silver check tray, phones held like trophies. I thumbed my screen to call a ride, but my eyes stuck on my reflection. Jaw tight, tie a little crooked, a man who had finally chosen quiet over spectacle. A gust lifted the corner of the receipt in my hand. I folded it, slid it into my wallet like evidence. The car pulled up, and I stepped in without looking back. The door thumped shut, leaving the stage to them. Streetlights stuttered across the windshield as we rolled, one by one like mile markers on a road I should have taken long ago. I knew exactly where I was going next. Home was small, honest. Coffee dripped in the dark while the heater clicked awake. I hung my uniform on the back of a chair, smoothed the name patch with my thumb, and looked at the calendar that used to say hours. Lines crossed, sticky notes curling, weekends claimed by someone else's plans. I sat, pen in hand, breath slow. Survival first. Keep the lights on. Safety next. Lock the doors on the parts of me that get borrowed and never returned. Then belonging. Who gets a seat at my table when the sirens are off? I wrote it clean at the top of a fresh page. Personal respect policy. In effect. 3 words that felt like a key turning. I moved training days, protected the emergency shifts, blocked time to be a human being, not a prop. Save it. Print it. Tape it to the wall. The coffee beeped. I poured a black cup and took the first honest sip I'd had in months. Morning found me at her studio with 2 coffees and a quiet hope we could be civil. Ring lights glared against the glass. Swatches of blush and ivory bloomed across the wall. She was live, smile wide, voice brighter than the bulbs. "Set it there," she mouthed, not muting, not waving me in. One of her friends glanced at me like I was delivery. I set the cup down where she pointed and stepped back into the hallway, the door soft closing on the word aspirational. Under the hum of LEDs, I swallowed the thing I wanted to say, and chose silence again. That's a muscle too, the one that keeps you from talking when talking won't change a thing. The coffee I brought for her sat full. The coffee I kept for me went cold. The ring light reflected in the glass like a halo around a brand new stranger. I left without a scene, but not without a plan. An hour later, my phone buzzed. A photo of champagne under helicopter blades captioned, "Aspirational weekend. Good lighting, better angles, no room for dirt or doubt." I stared a beat, then opened my camera and shot my own picture. A trout in a cast iron pan, butter cracking, steam fogging the lens. No caption. No hashtags. Just heat, work, and something you could actually eat. Her world was always about being seen. Mine was about being held. By hands, by minutes that matter, by people who need help breathing when the room spins. 2 pictures, 2 maps. I hit send and let the contrast do the talking for me. The replies started. Hearts, sparkles, then silence. Somewhere, a line was drawing itself between show and substance, between noise and weight. I didn't gloat. I didn't explain. I just cleaned the pan, wiped the stove, and set my phone face down. There were bigger changes to make than a caption could carry. That afternoon, I treated my calendar like a busted engine. Hood up, sleeves rolled, fix what actually moves the wheels. Training blocks shifted to mornings, emergency shifts locked tight, weekends reclaimed from vague content. I canceled the things that looked good and kept the things that saved lives. Every click was a decision I'd avoided for months. Confirm, confirm, confirm. I sent invoices, cleaned up accounts, removed logins I shouldn't have shared. Ritual, not rage, because order is a kind of mercy you give yourself. The inbox pinged with scheduling approvals. My printer rattled out a neat stack of new rosters. I taped the week on the wall under personal respect policy. In effect, stepped back and felt the room get bigger without moving a single piece of furniture. It wasn't dramatic. It was adult. A map you can follow in the dark. And just when the day finally felt steady, the next test knocked on my door. I thought the next test would come from work. I was wrong. The knock wasn't a fist on wood. It was the part of me that finally meant it. I pulled the plastic bins from the shelf and started packing my gear. Tourniquets, masks, spare radios, the stuff that never shows up in pretty pictures but keeps people alive. The mannequins stared up with blank eyes while I lined them shoulder to shoulder like students waiting their turn. Zip. One bag shut. Thunk. Another bin stacked. My keys chimed against the metal door frame, a small sound that felt bigger than it was. I rolled the cart into storage, flipped the light, and took a breath that reached the bottom of my lungs. Men know that breath, the one before you draw a line. The lock slid into place with a clean, hard click, and the echo hung in the empty hall like a bell. That sound wasn't just a lock, it was a border. Tools on my side, noise on the other. I pocketed the keys. Then my phone lit up again. It was Hannah at the studio, leaning out of a floral consult like a friend sneaking a cigarette. "She's performing today," she whispered, eyes soft, hands dusted with pollen. Inside, brides debated napkin shades like it was policy, not fabric. I nodded, because what else do you do when a whole room is built to shine? The truth didn't need a speech, it needed a sentence. I kept my voice low. I do outcomes, not moods. She understood. You can tell by the way someone exhales whether your words landed. Hannah exhaled slow, then slipped back to her table, back to hydrangeas and timelines. I stayed in the hall and watched the ring lights pulse in the glass, like a heartbeat for a room that only lived when cameras were on. If you've ever stood just outside a door and realized you don't belong in the conversation inside, you know that ache. My phone buzzed again. Friday night, table for two. I almost smiled. Maybe this was the olive branch, the clean start. But deep down, I knew. The internet never forgets. And neither does a person who's been filmed for sport. Still, some part of me wanted to believe she meant it this time, and that's where I made my next mistake. "Just us, Friday, no phone," she promised, and for a blink I wanted to believe it. The restaurant had that soft glow that makes everyone look kinder. She wore a dress that matched the lights, like she planned it. A corner table waited, 2 place settings, a candle that tried hard. Then the door swung open and the air changed. Friends poured in, loud, hugging the room like they owned it. "Networking time," Sarah said, bright as the bulbs, waving them over without even looking at me. A man in a shiny watch took her chair with his jacket. She slid in closer to him like it was nothing. If you're a man who's ever watched a promise get replaced by a plan you didn't agree to, you know how your stomach drops and your jaw sets. I lifted my water, tasted nothing, and felt Friday turn into content again. The hostess added chairs. The candle flickered. The table wasn't ours anymore. Neither was the night. The long table filled like a runway. Phones up, filters on, voices bouncing off glass. A server pitched the reserve list like a luxury car ad. Melissa leaned in with a smile that cut. "So, camping? That your anniversary plan?" Lenses tilted toward me. I could feel the recording button in the air. "We're celebrating," Sarah announced, waving the wine list like a flag. "Something aspirational." Melissa laughed. "There are levels, right?" The word hit the table and kept ringing. Levels. Status. Ladders some folks spend their lives climbing without ever asking if the wall is worth the view. I watched the server, watched his eyes flick to my boots, then back to the bottle. Men my age know this room, the one where money talks and dignity whispers. I didn't argue. I don't argue with microphones. Sarah smiled wider and repeated it, louder this time, like a chorus in a song that wasn't written for me. "There are levels." I tried to bring the conversation to ground that holds. County signed the training contract, I said, calm. We're setting up hands-only CPR for... Her knee touched mine under the table, a small tap that said, stop, not now, not here. She wanted glossy, not grit. I closed my mouth and studied the scene instead. The wine catching the light, the phones humming, the way the laughter made the server flinch. Every man over 40 learns this discipline, the strength to finish a sentence in your head and not out loud. I took a breath, the kind I teach on Monday mornings. In through the nose, slow out. My pulse leveled. If respect isn't welcome at the table, you take it with you when you stand. I folded my napkin, placed it clean by the plate, and let the room play on without me. The joke was still rolling. The camera was still rolling. But so was the decision I'd already made. So I let the room talk while I watched the edges sharpen. Tent jokes, mosquito jokes, diesel jokes, all of it tossed like peanuts to a crowd. The server hovered, unsure whether to laugh or rescue, eyes darting between the wine list and my face. A camera light winked. Someone said, "Imagine waking up in a sleeping bag. Romance, right?" The laugh landed harder than it deserved. That's when I decided the night was over, and I'd be the one to end it. I slid my card onto the silver tray and looked the server in the eye. "The table," I said, steady. He blinked, then nodded like he'd just been handed a life raft. The chatter stuttered. No speech, no scene. I paid for the performance and bought myself the exit. The receipt printed in a slow, honest grind, a softer sound than their laughter, but heavier somehow. I signed, stood, and felt the room tip. If they wanted a finale, this was it. I picked up my coat and moved. Chairs scraped. A few phones floated up to follow, hungry for a second act. "Jackson, wait!" Sarah called, voice too bright, like she could edit the last 5 minutes with tone alone. I didn't turn. A man learns, somewhere past 40, that not every call is a summons. The door swung open on the first try, and the city air met me with a clean slap. Cold, real, no filter. Behind me, voices splashed against glass, muffled and distant, like shouting underwater. I took the steps slow on purpose, the kind of slow that says this is a choice, not a retreat. Silence tucked in beside me like an old friend I'd ignored. It didn't feel empty. It felt earned. On the sidewalk, my phone buzzed with messages already forming a narrative I didn't authorize. I slid it back into my pocket. No last look, no last word. The only thing I left behind was noise. But noise has a way of finding you, even when you walk away. Noise doesn't survive long in a room that remembers work. My office smelled like leather and Lysol. The old sofa took my weight the way it always had. I showered in the stall that never quite gets hot and hung my shirt by the space heater to steam out the creases. Dawn wasn't pink. It was gray and practical, the way Monday mornings are. I brewed black coffee, flipped on the fluorescent, and laid out masks, gloves, and training valves in straight lines. The world out there could keep the sparkle. In here, we keep people breathing. I checked my watch. 5:47. Wiped the tablet screens. 5:53. Set the metronome to 110. 5:57. The hallway was quiet enough to hear the clock throat clear. Then the moment that always resets me. 6:00 a.m., the classroom door opening, boots on concrete, a couple yawns, a couple nods, men and women who fix real problems for a living. "Morning," I said. "Let's get to the part that matters." We circled the mannequins like a pit crew around a stalled engine. 30 warehouse hands, a few nurses on their off day, folks who smelled like rain and forklift grease. I showed them fingers interlaced, locked arms, shoulders over the sternum. No speeches, just the truth you can feel in your elbows. "Harder than you think, faster than you want," I said, tapping the metronome. I started the first round, then stepped back and let them find the beat. The room answered, palms thudding foam, air moving, bodies leaning in with care and force. The chant rose by itself, the way good work does. Push hard, push fast, push hard, push fast. It wasn't pretty. It was good. A man in a faded ball cap looked up, breathing hard. "Like this?" Exactly like that. We rotated, wiped sweat, reset. Phones stayed in pockets because no one needed proof, only practice. By the third cycle, the room sounded like a single engine firing. That's a kind of music, too. I was halfway through cleaning the training room when my phone buzzed. Not from her, but from a number I didn't know. "Hey man, I was your waiter that night," the text read. "Just wanted to say, I saw what they did. Not everyone laughs." There was a photo attached, the silver tray, my receipt, and a folded napkin that said in his handwriting, "Respect counts." I stared at it longer than I should have. Not pride, relief. For weeks I'd thought the moment died in that room, but somebody else had seen it clean. The truth doesn't always travel fast, but it remembers the route. I locked the phone, took a breath that reached my ribs, and went back to work. The metronome ticked steady on the table, same as my pulse. After class, I sat at the metal desk that has seen more midnight meals than dates and opened my laptop. Time to make the inside match the outside. Subject line, transition in effect, effective today. I spelled it out plain. Separate finances, separate calendars, studio access revoked, shared logins removed. No blame, just boundaries. I attached screenshots, CC'd my accountant, and read it twice like I would a medical label, because details save you pain later. My finger hovered, then dropped. Send. The whoosh sounded like a door shutting, not with anger, but with authority. One more email. Storage unit locks changed, new keys assigned. Another. Vendor list updated, invoices direct to me. I wasn't erasing history. I was ending a chapter with clean margins. The inbox pinged its little approval chime, and for the first time in a long time, the admin work felt like a win. Grown man choices, documented and dated. And outside, the day kept getting brighter. The day kept getting brighter, and that's when the door opened, and Sarah stepped in with a paper grocery bag like a peace offering. Tomatoes on top, a sprig of basil for effect, props for a softer scene. Her voice came out low, practiced. "I made your soup. Can we talk?" The room smelled like coffee and bleach, not candles, and her heels sounded wrong on my concrete floor. She set the bag down and searched my face like there was still a script I'd follow. Men my age know this moment, when someone tries to rewind after the tape's already recorded over. I stood, calm as a patient pulse. "Not now," I said, and it wasn't mean. It was final. She blinked, surprised that a sentence could close a door better than a lock. The bag rustled as the basil sank from perfect to ordinary. She tried again. I nodded toward the class schedule on the wall. "I've got people coming." The hallway swallowed the rest. She pivoted like a pro, hands open, apology out front. "I overdid it. Too much wine, too much pressure. I'll delete the dumb bits. We can fix this." Pressure. Wine. The old alibis. She wanted a clean cut where there'd been a slow bruise. I kept my tone even. "I get pressure," I said. "It's the job some days." Her eyes searched for the lever that used to move me. "I'll post something sweet, no drama." She waited for me to rescue her from her own footage. I shook my head once. The internet keeps its own receipts. A small line, but it landed like a gavel. She shifted feet, tried a softer smile, offered to manage optics like it was CPR. That's the thing about dignity. Once you choose it, you can't trade it back for likes. She ran out of lines before I ran out of boundaries. "I'm running a course," I said. "You can leave the groceries. We're done here." When she left, the room exhaled. A minute later, my phone buzzed. Hannah, then Chris, side-angle video, clean audio. Other guests had filmed too. I sat at the edge of the desk and pressed play. No commentary, no edits, just the tent joke, the not worth my time, the card on the tray, and me walking out without a word anyone could twist. The truth didn't need a caption. It had angles now, plural. I watched it once. Once was enough. I put the phone face down and stared at the wall where the metronome chart hangs. In this line of work, you learn to look away from the blood and toward the steps. Breathe, check, act. I picked up my clipboard and set up the next class like the internet didn't exist. Silence can be a strategy if you've got work to do. The notifications kept blinking, but the mannequins didn't care. They were ready. So was I. That night, I scrolled just once and froze. A new clip surfaced, not mine. Security footage from the restaurant, clean angle, no edits, no captions. The sound of her friends laughing, the camera panning toward me, and then her voice, sharp, proud. There are levels. Only this time, people saw the whole thing. A waiter had posted it saying, "Some of us still believe in dignity." Comments turned fast. The internet flipped the lens. My silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was proof. I didn't cheer, didn't repost, just sat in the dark, phone face down, heartbeat steady. Sometimes the truth doesn't need your help to win. It just waits for the right witness. But the internet never crowns a winner. It just picks a new target. By lunch, the inbox sounded like rain on a metal roof. Steady, a little loud, hard to ignore. A school district director wrote first, "Saw how you handled yourself. Do you train staff?" A logistics manager followed. "Saturdays for our crews?" A gym chain. "We need AED refreshers after an incident." I answered everyone, short and clear. Dates, rates, done. A message came in with the line, "I'll remember." We need that kind of calm. Not fancy, not viral, useful. That's a currency you can spend anywhere. Men who've lived a little know it. When life gets noisy, you look for the voice that doesn't shake. I built a schedule that reached into months I hadn't planned yet. It felt less like luck and more like someone finally noticed the work that doesn't beg to be noticed. I poured another coffee, signed 2 contracts, and adjusted the training map on the wall. The day kept choosing me back. And then she did what people do when the story slips. She filmed herself as the victim of control, voice catching just enough to sound human, not naming me but sketching the outline with a thick marker. Comments appeared like gnats, buzzing, guessing, choosing sides without seeing the room. I didn't answer. I didn't sub-post. I didn't even type and delete. Sometimes the strongest statement a man can make is to leave his hands in his pockets. The truth had legs now. It could walk without me. I focused on the list. Invoices, class rosters, a call with the fire chief about a joint drill. Let her chase approval. I'll chase readiness. Silence isn't surrender when you've got proof and a plan. Hannah texted a single line, "You're doing the right thing." I believed her because the work believed me back. I turned off my screen, grabbed the training kit, and headed for the door. The next room was full of people who actually needed me. I was halfway down the hall to the next class when the ripple hit the bigger ponds. A wedding page reposted the clip, then another, and the comments split like summer thunderheads. Some folks cheering, some scolding, plenty just there to watch. The vendors didn't join the noise. They went quiet, which is its own kind of weather. You learn over 40 that silence from the people who sell you flowers and floors means more than 100 heart emojis. My phone buzzed again. Hannah. "Heads up. Brides are asking questions." Then, "Vendors are waiting this one out." 10 minutes later, the line I won't forget. "Brides are pulling out." Not one, not two, plural. That's how a story travels in layers. Friends, then friends of friends, then the folks who write checks. I stood in the doorway of my classroom and watched my students tie back their hair and pull on gloves. Out there was noise. In here was work. "All right," I said, holding the door. "Let's begin." The best reply to a rumor is an invoice paid on time. I signed the county agreement at lunch. No photo, no handshake boomerang, just a steady pen stroke on a line that mattered. Then I called my supplier and ordered a batch of new mannequins, enough to run bigger classes without pairing strangers who didn't want to pair. Storage was tight, so I rented the empty unit next to mine, rolled up the door, and began moving shelves like a man building an honest future, one rack at a time. That afternoon, I marked the new training dates in bold, printed fresh sign-up sheets and thumbtacked them dead center on the corkboard. No captions, no soft lighting, just the shape of the next month coming into focus. When a job foreman stopped by to confirm Saturdays for his crews, I walked him through the plan, then shook his hand like my father taught me. Look a man in the eye and mean it. Actions speak fluently when mouths get loud. Loud found me anyway. My screen lit with her name and a paragraph that tried to carry everything at once. "You ruined my year. My clients are panicking. We need a joint statement." Need, joint, statement. 3 words that belong to brands, not people. I read it twice, then set the phone down and stared at the personal respect policy taped to my wall. Men in my age bracket know this muscle too, the one that keeps your reply short and clean. I typed without heat. We don't have a joint anything. Sent. The echo wasn't cruel, it was accurate. She followed fast with sweeteners. We can fix this. We can spin this. I'll tag you. Hero angle. The pitch had all the chords, none of the truth. I closed my laptop, grabbed my kit, and locked the office. Out in the lot, a siren wailed a few blocks over, and I remembered what actually counts. Her story could sprint. My choices could last. Work has a way of introducing you to the right rooms when you're ready. That evening, I hit a local business mixer in a VFW hall with bad coffee and good people. My name tag read Jackson Practical. It's practical. Written with a marker that bled through a little. I shook hands with a school principal who wanted a staff refresher before fall, and a warehouse manager who needed a Saturday block for new hires. No slideshows, no sales voice, just a clear pitch. Here's what we teach, here's what it costs, here's why it matters. We penciled dates right there on the plastic table, using the back of a flyer for a charity car wash. 2 bookings in 15 minutes, plus a promise to call from the fire chief about a joint drill. Momentum doesn't need music, it needs a map. I walked out into a parking lot that smelled like cut grass and diesel and thought, this is what grown man luck feels like. Earned, not posted. Saturday mornings belong to the town. We run a community class, $20 if you can, free if you can't, and we don't ask which is which. Folks drift in with mud on their boots and sleep still in their eyes. A single dad from the night shift, a grandma who watches 3 grandkids, a teenager who lost a friend and wants to be ready next time. I go slow on purpose, hands placement, body weight, counting out loud until it feels like second nature. A guy in a frayed ball cap struggled, then found the rhythm, sweat beating at his temples. He looked up, embarrassed by how hard he was breathing. Sorry, he said. Haven't done this since high school. I shook my head. Doesn't matter where you've been. Matters what you can do right now. He nodded, swallowed, and said the word men say when they mean it. Thanks. Not fancy, not viral, just honest. The kind that keeps a stranger alive on a bad day. After class, I wiped down the tables and the TV in the lobby caught my ear. Local news, talking about dignity in the face of public humiliation. No names, just the story. A pastor weighed in. A nurse did too. The anchor said something about how quiet can be louder than a speech. It was strange hearing my week turned into a lesson for strangers. I stood there a beat, coffee cooling in my hand, then clicked the screen dark. Glory's a sugar rush. Work is protein. I walked back to the whiteboard where tomorrow's drills were half sketched. Choking response, AED refreshers, rescue breathing. I capped the marker, uncapped it, tightened the plan. Men my age know that feeling when the world wants you to bask and your gut says, get back to it. I did. The board filled with steps that keep people living. Outside, the story kept spreading. Inside, I set the metronome to 110 and wrote, practice saves minutes. Minutes save lives. The spread pushed her to try a new angle, literally. Sarah filmed herself in soft light, voice cracking, asking for context, calling me cold, distant, controlling. Tears worked the edges. Comments poured in with sympathy, and for a second I could almost feel the old pull to defend myself. Then another clip surfaced. Clean side view, no filters, the dinner sound crisp as a bell. Her laugh about the tent, the not worth my time line, clear, my card on the tray. Me leaving without a word you could twist by evidence. That's a different kind of pivot. The sympathy in her comments slowed, then tripped. People will forgive mistakes. They don't forgive pretending the camera lied. I watched the new angle once, same as before, and felt the tug in my chest release. Not triumph, relief. Facts don't need me to babysit them. I set the phone down, grabbed a dry erase, and finished tomorrow's rescue timeline. The truth had legs now. Let it walk. By afternoon, my inbox mixed contracts with confessions. A vendor DM'd me, straight no chaser. We don't want to be around that energy. Not curious, just done. Another said they'd paused future collabs until things settled. I'm old enough to know what that word means. Nobody wants smoke that makes them cough. I typed 2 words back, be well, and left it there. No shade, no sermon. That's how you close a valve without breaking the pipe. I put the phone on the shelf and took inventory. Gloves, valves, alcohol pads. There's a kind of peace that shows up when you stop chasing explanations that won't land. Hannah swung by with a quick smile and a box of ribbon scraps for practice tourniquets. "You okay?" "Working," I said. She nodded like that was the right answer. I turned the metronome on with my knuckle, tick, 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 and let that little plastic heartbeat drown out the last of the online noise. Peace never lasts long, not when someone's losing followers. Noise turned into order the day I hired Lena. She's the kind of steady you hear in a clean calendar. No drama in the margins, no mystery in the middle. We sat at the metal desk and built standard operating procedures like we were framing a house. Intake calls, class caps, late policy, gear checks. She labeled bins, color-coded rosters, and made my scribbles look like a plan a stranger could follow. The phone rang and she took it, listened, and then said a word that saved us 5 minutes and a headache. "No." Not rude, clear. "We don't offer that, but here's what we do." Boundaries are just respect with a backbone. Men over 40 know. One strong no beats 10 soft apologies later. By noon, the board looked different, tighter, calmer. I felt the room change shape without moving a wall. Lena slid a revised schedule across the desk. "This will hold," she said. I believed her. Structure can carry weight feelings never will. With structure came space. I signed the lease on the empty unit next door, rolled up the door, and stood in the dust, seeing what it would be. We patched holes, wired more outlets, and painted the walls a calm, honest color, somewhere between sky before rain and the inside of a good denim jacket. The smell of fresh paint beat out the ghost of storage and turned the room into a promise. Racks went up, mats unrolled. The AED wall mounted straight and true. At dusk, we bolted the new sign to the front and waited for the switch. When it snapped on, the letters glowed steady over the lot, not flashy, certain. Rebirth isn't trumpets, it's a light that works when you flip it. I locked up, stepped back, and let the quiet soak in. This wasn't revenge, it was capacity. Tomorrow, more people could learn the skill that keeps a heart on the clock. That's the kind of shine I can live with. Capacity draws attention, and attention brings offers you don't need. The week the new sign lit up, Sarah texted a pitch with glossy edges. "Let me feature your hero stories. I'll tag you. We can steer this." A pretty sentence for a thing that was already straight. She wanted the picture of what I do, not the work itself. The minute where a stranger's chest rises again because a pair of hands learned what to do. I read the message in the doorway, paint still faint in the air, and felt that old tug to be presented. Men my age know the trap. Let someone curate you, and you owe them the frame. I typed slowly so I'd mean it. No more spins. Period. No lecture, no gore, no list of receipts. Boundaries don't need adjectives. She typed bubbles, then stopped. The room got quieter in a way that felt like a win. I slid the phone face down and walked back to the mats. That's when I noticed her. The woman in the back row I kept seeing at Saturday classes. Erin, ER nurse. Arms folded, eyes scanning like she was counting heartbeats from across the room. She didn't film. She watched. During the break, she drifted up to a mannequin and pressed 2 fingers to the foam ribs with a face that said she'd done this where it counts. "Your rate works for younger bodies," she said, calm. "But older chests, brittle ribs, benefit from a slightly slower cadence with full recoil. No drama, no flex, just data baked into muscle memory. I like people who argue with experience, not volume." She pointed to the metronome and suggested a tweak, then demonstrated, shoulders stacked, elbows locked, rhythm steady enough to trust. The class circled in, listening with the kind of respect you can't manufacture. I felt something shift in the room. This wasn't about being right. It was about being useful. That's my language. Usefulness invites a test, and I'm not shy about giving one. "Prove it," I said, tilting the metronome down 2 notches. Erin laughed. "Small, real." "Small? You're impossible." "Manage that," I answered and stepped aside. She ran the drill with a crew of stubborn men who don't change habits easily. 10 compressions in, their shoulders synced with hers. 20 in, the recoil looked cleaner. A minute in, the man in the ball cap said, Easier to sustain. That's the tell. I split the class into two groups, old rate and Aaron's rate, and timed fatigue. Her side lasted longer with better depth. We all saw it. No debate necessary. I nodded once, the way you nod when your pride and your purpose agree. We'll teach that, I said, loud enough to land. Aaron's eyes softened, not triumph, recognition. The class clapped their palms against their thighs. I wrote the new cadence on the board. The marker squeaked like a signature. We had just gotten better. Better shows up in the quiet hours, too. That night, Sarah came by the office in the sweater I used to say made winter look kind. The parking lot was half empty. The building hummed low. She stood in the doorway like a memory asking for a second chance. "We can reset," she began, voice wrapped in the kind of softness that once moved mountains in me. I kept my hands flat on the desk. "You like the word we when there's a deliverable on the other side," I said, not cruel, just precise. She winced. Truth stings on the way in, then heals. She talked about optics, about how together we could redirect the narrative. I thought about compressions, not impressions, about classrooms that cared more about minutes than mentions. She waited for me to blink first. I didn't. The heater clicked. Outside, a siren faded. Inside, a chapter did the same. Some doors don't slam. They simply stop swinging. She tried one more angle, a pitch between confession and sales. "You could be bigger with me," she said, eyes flicking to the fresh paint, the added space, the racks lined straight. I stood and walked her past the mannequins, the AED wall, the schedule Lena had tightened until it sang. "I am getting bigger," I told her, palm on the laminate that lists our classes. "I'm building something with weight." That word sat between us. Weight. The kind you feel when a life stays on the clock because the training held. She looked at the mannequin, at the dents in the foam where real hands had learned a hard kindness. The ring light glow she carried in her mind didn't fit here. For once, she didn't have a line ready. Silence returned, different this time, less fight, more truth. Her eyes dropped. Mine didn't. Not every victory has a crowd. Some are a woman going quiet in a room that respects work. The quiet in my office didn't last. The clip made the regional news, no names, just the shape of what happened and a segment about dignity when you're pushed in public. A pastor wrote a short piece about holding your tongue when your pride wants to swing. A nurse called in to say calm is a skill, not a mood. That's the thing about trust. Once people who actually do the work nod, the crowd listens differently. My calendar felt it first, emails stacking, voicemails from schools, plants, gyms. Lena blocked dates until the grid went tight. 2 months out, every Saturday was spoken for, every Tuesday evening penciled and then inked. Men my age know this rhythm. The phone used to be quiet. Now it hums like a well-tuned truck. I didn't post a victory lap. I sharpened pencils, restocked gloves, and checked the AEDs. When belief shows up from people who've earned their scars, you don't celebrate. You get ready. "We're booked," Lena said. "Good," I said. "Let's deliver." Delivering doesn't stop the old life from passing by. I swung by the apartment to grab a toolbox I'd missed, and found Sarah walking a couple through the living room, clipboard in hand, pitching it as a rentable studio. Afternoon light, clean lines, authentic. She saw me and stalled mid-sentence, then smiled a public smile. "Give me a minute?" she asked the couple, guiding them toward the balcony. The room felt staged and hollow, like a promise without a pulse. We stood 6 feet apart with more history than furniture between us. No raised voices, no tears, just two people who know exactly what time it is. I set the toolbox by my boot and waited. She looked at the ring light in the corner like it might feed her a line. It didn't. When a fight is over, the volume drops first. What's left is the truth. She tucked the clipboard under her arm and said, "Can we talk privately?" I nodded once. Briefly. We stepped into the hallway where echoes work slow. She didn't reach for my arm. She didn't reach for a tear. "I talked to a lawyer," she said, eyes steady. "Not about you, about me. This industry eats people. I wanted control so I wouldn't get used." I believed her. Fear wears expensive clothes, but it's still fear. "So you chose the lever you know," I said. She nodded. "Image moves doors. It always has." I thought about bodies on floors and the doors that matter. ER doors, school doors, warehouse roll-ups. You picked the wrong lever, I told her. Control isn't safety, it's posture. She winced, then squared up. I didn't want to be small. Men over 40 know this fight. Small versus safe, pride versus peace. Big isn't loud, I said. It's solid. The word hung there like a weight on a hook. You're right, she whispered. And for the first time it didn't sound like strategy. It sounded like tired. Tired turned into scorekeeping. I booked 2 small weddings this week, she said, chin lifting a notch, like the numbers could stitch the wound. People still get married, I answered, and meant it kindly. I walked to the kitchen counter where a dish still held our spare keys, laid mine down metal on tile, and felt the sound cut clean. That was the end of our house. No ceremony, no caption, just keys as closure. She watched my hand, then my face, then the door. We had plans, she said, softer now, like she could flip pages back. We had calendars, I corrected. Plans show up. She looked away toward the balcony where the couple waited, choosing angles. There are moments a man defines himself by what he doesn't pick up again. I lifted the toolbox, straightened my shoulders, and let the weight find the center of me. Take care, I said, because endings deserve manners. The latch clicked. The hall felt bigger. I'd almost reached the elevator when she called after me, not a command this time, a request. Say something kind, she said, voice smaller than the room. I turned, met her eyes, and told the truth without shine. You're good at making a room look like a promise. Her shoulders dropped an inch, surprised I remembered. I nodded toward the toolbox, toward the work I was walking back to. I'm better at keeping people in that room alive. That's the difference that split us, promise versus life. One takes light, the other takes weight. She breathed out a sound that wasn't quite a sob, more like air leaving a story. For a second, neither of us moved. Then the elevator dinged, practical as a clock. Doors opened. Choices did too. I stepped in and faced forward. She stayed in the hallway with her clipboard and a space full of angles. Not every story needs a twist. Some just need an honest line. But endings have a habit of echoing when you least expect it. The elevator doors closed on that honest line, and a week later I closed on a house that fit my life instead of my image. A small place with a garage deep enough to hang every tool where it belongs. I spent Saturday setting hooks, coiling extension cords, lining wrenches from big to small like notes on a staff. The driveway stretched wide and level, and when I rolled the truck in for the first time, nothing rattled on the shelves and the picture frames didn't shimmy. I killed the engine and let the quiet sit like a heavy blanket after a hard day. Men my age will understand this. Peace you can park on beats any view you have to pose for. I left the keys on a nail where I could reach them in the dark, clicked off the garage light, and stood a moment in the doorway. Tires stopped, house held, floor steady. For the first time in a long time, my shoulders dropped. Peace makes room for play, so I found an old aluminum boat with good bones and a motor that asked for care, not apology. I patched a seam, changed the plugs, and launched at the public ramp where dads back trailers in crooked and nobody minds. July heat lay on the river like glass. We pulled kids on a sun-faded tube, and they laughed the kind of laugh you can't fake. Mouths open, heads back, no phones out. The motor settled into a low, honest purr, wake unrolling like new ribbon behind us. That sound, engine even, water talking against the hull, reset something I hadn't named. The shoreline slid by, cottonwoods, a blue heron, a dock with peeling paint. I eased the throttle and watched the rope tighten true, keeping speed where fun stays safe. Sun on forearms, spray on knees, air in my chest. The river said, "Keep going," and for once I didn't argue. Sundays found a new ritual. I'd hit the diner with the neon coffee cup in the window, the kind of place that serves eggs on real plates and plays a ball game low in the corner. The waitress knew my order by week 2. Black coffee, 2 over-easy wheat toast, extra napkins because I'm still a little messy. Nobody asked what I did for clicks or who I knew downtown. They asked about the weather, the score last night, whether the new stoplight would help the morning backup. Small talk, big kindness. Refill? She'd ask, pot already tilting. Yes, ma'am, I'd say, happy to be predictable. A kid in a baseball jersey spun on a stool, and an old-timer read the paper like it still mattered. If you've ever been carried by a routine after a rough season, you know the medicine. Warm mug, steam on my face, a seat by the window, and exactly nothing I needed to prove. Routine sharpened the work. Erin started showing up on Saturdays, posted up in the back row, arms folded the way nurses do when they're reading a room. Between drills, she asked about the metronome again, this time with a note. For older students, give them more recoil time. It saves their shoulders. We tested it with a volunteer crew in their 50s. Slower cadence, same depth, cleaner breath. You could see relief in their posture and hear it in the exhale when they realized they could keep pace. We rewrote the handout right there, penciling changes before the printer ever saw them. That's co-creating value. No speech, just two professionals stealing the best idea from reality. A retired mechanic, hands nicked and stained, patted the mannequin and said, "I can keep up now." We didn't clap, we didn't post. We added it to the curriculum, adjusted the metronome, and moved on. One notch closer to doing the job right. Better makes room for more, and more came in threes. A school district wanted full faculty trained by fall, a gym chain needed AED refreshers after a scare, and a warehouse asked for Saturday sessions through winter. I ordered additional demo units, stacked boxes of new valves, and watched Lena slide magnets across the big board until the month clicked into place. The second van came from a county auction. Paint scratched, engine solid. I ran a hand along the dented side panel like you greet an old dog and turned the key. The idle was steady, belts clean, dash quiet. We loaded mannequins 2 by 2, tossed in cones and mats, and shut the doors with a sure thunk. No ribbon cutting, no speech, just a small convoy pulling away from the curb with purpose you can feel in your chest. 2 vehicles rolling, a calendar worth wearing out, and enough work ahead to keep good people busy. The week ran smooth until my screen lit up with a message that knew exactly where to aim. No hard feelings. Short. Polite. Easy to swallow if you don't think about it. I stood in the garage with a socket wrench in my hand and read it twice under the bulb's hum. Men my age know this tug, nostalgia trying to pass for mercy. I typed what the truth allowed and nothing more. No feelings at all. Take care. Send. The words didn't explode. They settled. I wiped my hands on a shop towel and slid the wrench back into its slot, big to small, easy to find in the dark. You don't have to burn a bridge if you've already walked across and kept going. Outside, the neighborhood sounded like summer, sprinklers ticking, a dog collar jingling down the sidewalk. I turned out the light, locked the door, and felt the quiet hold. Some endings don't echo. They just stop asking for your time. Time was the point when Erin and I finally sat down off the clock. We picked a corner table at a diner with more coffee stains than decor and said what grown people say when they actually like their work. Here's my schedule. Here's yours. Where do we protect the parts that keep us sane? She talked through ER nights, the shifts that leave your bones humming. I laid out training weeks, the travel blocks that sneak up. We wrote 2 words into a shared calendar, real life, and everything else had to move around those. No selfies, no look at us posts. Just a rhythm 2 adults could keep without resenting it. I liked how she didn't ask for more than I could give and didn't offer what she couldn't sustain. We left 2 afternoons open every month with no label on them at all. That's how you test something genuine, not by squeezing it, but by giving it room to breathe. Breathing room showed up at class 2. The sign-up sheet overflowed, men with mud on their boots, nurses in Crocs, a mom who came straight from a double shift. We ran stations like a relay, compressions, breaths, AED, switch. Sweat hit the mats. Laughter showed up in the corners when somebody got the timing right on their 3rd try. At the end, a man in his 60s stayed behind, ball cap in hand, eyes wet in the way men pretend is allergies. "My wife," he said, voice catching, "is still breathing because a neighbor knew this." He didn't make a speech. He said thank you like it was a tool he'd sharpened for this one job. I shook his hand, both of mine around his. If you've ever needed proof you pointed your life at something that matters, that's it. We wiped down the mannequins and stacked the cones. The room smelled like effort and Lysol and good news. Good news travels differently when it wears a badge. City Hall called about a proposal, so I found myself in a conference room with stale muffins, hand sanitizer on the table, and a slideshow that didn't work. I brought paper copies because I've learned to respect printers. A deputy director with no time for fluff asked sharp questions: cost, coverage, rollout, like a person who's held a scene together while people panicked. We talked about choking drills in cafeterias, AED checks in gyms, and how to train custodians who know the buildings better than anyone. She closed the folder, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "I want that man, the one who didn't swing back, to teach my staff." No drumroll. Just a decision from someone whose decisions matter. I walked down the hall past pictures of mayors I've never met and a bulletin board full of bake sales and lost dog flyers, thinking how ordinary rooms hold the best turns in a life. The turn became paperwork by noon. "Approved. Start Monday," the email read, plain as concrete. I printed the contract, signed it with a pen that writes even when you hold it upside down, and got to work on the parts no one claps for. We posted for 3 part-time instructors and hired steady hands who'd rather show than shout. Lena and I wrote a simple playbook for fire scenarios: clear lanes, clear calls, no hero speeches. She labeled bins, I checked batteries, and the vans got their oil changed in the same lot where we teach teenagers to check a pulse. Erin dropped by between shifts with coffee that tasted like she knew my exact hour. We stood by the whiteboard and mapped week 1, week 2, week 3, a rhythm we could keep without breaking. The room felt ready, like a stage only we cared about. I clicked the metronome once and let it tick while we locked the door behind us. Week 1 moved fast, and Erin showed up with a simple challenge: run the new cadence against the old, let the room decide. We split the class, left side my way, right side hers, same depth, slower return, full recoil. I timed fatigue, watched shoulders, listened for the breath that tells you someone's pushing past good form. 10, 20, 30 compressions in, the difference was loud without anyone saying a word. Erin's line held steadier, longer, cleaner. The older guys didn't grimace as much. The younger ones didn't waste motion. She stepped back, gave me that look nurses give when data's done talking. I nodded, wrote the new numbers on the board, and said it out loud so it stuck. "We'll teach that." Pride didn't bruise. It breathed easier. Men my age have learned the hard way. When a better way shows up, shake its hand. Erin smiled just enough to register, then grabbed a wipe and reset a mannequin. We weren't chasing credit. We were chasing outcomes. Outcomes spill into the in-between moments, too. Saturday, Hannah and Chris dropped by with a pink box of donuts and their kid, who made a game of crawling between mannequin legs like a maze. We sat on the floor because chairs felt formal and laughed at the powdered sugar mustache Chris picked up trying to talk and eat at the same time. No ring lights, no angles, just people who know the late-night calls and early alarms and still choose to show up for each other. Hannah cut a donut in half and passed it to me like we were back in grade school. "How's the schedule?" she asked. "Heavy," I said, "but right." The kid clapped at nothing and everything, and for once the room's only soundtrack was real laughter, the kind that fills corners and sticks to the walls like good paint. We didn't post it. We didn't need to. Some proof is meant to be lived, not saved. Monday morning brought a different kind of proof. An anonymous text hit the business line. "Didn't want to speak up in class. Just thank you." 10 minutes later, a small envelope slid under the office door. No return address, shaky cursive, a card that smelled faintly of a kitchen drawer. Inside, a note from an older woman. "I'm slower than I used to be. Your pace made room for me. If it saves one neighbor, that's enough." I stood there in the doorway, thinking about how many men chase applause and miss the quiet wins right under their boots. I took a piece of tape, walked to the corkboard where personal respect policy, in effect, hangs, and set her card just below it. Tools, rules, gratitude, stacked where I could see them when the day got loud. Lena smiled when she noticed. "Good place for it," she said. "Yeah," I answered. "Exactly where it belongs." By midweek, the noise had thinned enough for the river to be heard again. I loaded a small tent, a skillet, and the kind of coffee you make in a tin over blue flame, then pointed the truck toward the water. Out there, conversation is optional and truth is loud. Wind on your jacket, line humming like a soft wire, fire popping under a cheap pot. I pitched camp by muscle memory and let the evening sort me out. Casting wasn't about catching. It was about feeling the swing settle and the mind unclench. The sky went from brass to navy, and I ate from the pan with the same fork I stirred with. If you've ever worked yourself to a standstill, you know that silence isn't empty. It's maintenance. The river did what rivers do, kept moving without asking permission. I sat in that steady and let it wash the last of the week off my shoulders. No photos, just breathing. Driving home, the word that haunted that dinner floated back. Levels. It's a funny thing how a single syllable can try to measure a life. I thought about ladders leaned against the wrong wall, about how easy it is to climb and find nothing up there worth holding. I also thought about Aaron's cadence and the old mechanic who finally kept pace. Maybe there are levels, but they're not price tags or flight paths. They're virtues you practice when nobody's grading. Steadiness, restraint, follow-through. The kind of levels a man can explain to his kid without needing a showroom. I pulled into my driveway, no rattles, garage light popping on like a promise kept. Inside, the calendar waited with clean lines and honest work. I smiled, not from spite, but from finally naming it. There are levels of character. That's a ladder worth climbing because it holds when weather hits. I hung my keys, washed my hands, and set the coffee for morning. Ever been measured by the wrong kind of level? Stick around. I'll show you the kind that holds. Back in the garage, I wrote 3 lines on a yellow pad, then typed them into a post with no filter and no hashtag. Work, decency, quiet standards. That was it. No speech, no thread. A short creed I could carry in a pocket. I added 1 sentence. If you want noise, there's plenty. If you need readiness, come by Saturday. I hit publish and put the phone on the shelf. An hour later, a handful of comments showed up. The right handful. A night shift nurse thanked me for the slower cadence. A foreman said he'd bring 2 new hires. A dad wrote, "Needed this today," and left it at that. No arguments, no pile-on, just people with dirt under their nails and reasons to learn. I turned notifications off and went back to hanging tools. Men my age understand this math. Fewer eyes, better eyes. You can keep the wind that whips everything up. I'll take the weather that grows something. Order is its own kind of medicine, so Aaron and I walked the storage room like a checklist with legs. We counted mannequins, clicked through batteries, checked dates on valves and pads. She read off inventory while I stacked bins nose out so labels actually meant something. Lena joined us with the calendar, and we blocked the next quarter in magnets. Schools in blue, gyms in red, warehouses in yellow. Nothing fancy, just a map you can trust at 6 a.m. We finished with a sweep and a wipe down, then stood in the doorway the way you do before you lock a place you care about. I flipped the switch by the door. Fluorescence hummed down in a soft ripple. The room held its shape, shelves square, mats rolled tight, air calmer somehow. It's strange how a clean light switch can steady your pulse. We didn't say much walking out. We didn't have to. The door closed and my chest felt 2 pounds lighter. On the drive home, a post slid past. Sarah's new pitch. Intimate gatherings, softer fonts, smaller rooms. The numbers were thinner. Vendors stayed polite and distant. I didn't tap, didn't zoom, didn't read the comments. Parallel lanes don't need traffic reports. At a red light, I checked my own list. Prep for Tuesday's school, confirm the gym's AED shipment, print fresh waivers for Saturday. The light changed, and so did my focus. In this season, silence isn't a strategy, it's a lifestyle. Let her chase a new angle. I'll chase clean compressions, a stocked kit, a classroom that starts on time. I pulled into my driveway, no rattles, and backed the van in straight on the first try. The porch light came on like it knew I was coming. Inside, tomorrow's roster sat on the counter under a magnet. 20 names, 20 chances to put useful skills in real hands. I hung my keys, filled the coffee maker, and called it a good night. The room settled the way a lake settles after a thrown stone. I placed both hands on the mannequin's chest, shoulders stacked, elbows locked, and let the metronome find us. Tick, 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 steady as a good heart wants to be. Faces I've come to know lined the mats, men with mud on their boots, nurses with sore feet. A grandmother who refuses to be helpless. This is what we control, I said. Not the crowd, not the cameras, pressure, depth, recoil, breath. I pressed down and counted low, the click under my palms louder than any noise a room can make. You don't need to swing at every cut. Step aside and let the blade miss. Let the thrower watch it fall. Then do the work that keeps people here. I lifted my hands and the class stayed quiet, like a promise kept. If you've ever chosen silence to protect your dignity, drop a comment. I chose quiet. The class schedule's in the description. No hashtags, just skills that keep a stranger alive.